All right, everyone, I just want to go over some of the glaze pieces from this most recent firing. Not going to go over it a ton, but I'm just going to go over a few of them and then at the end give you a couple tips for how to get better results. So one of the issues that people had in this firing was that they either put the glaze on too thick or too thin. So this bowl right here and this piece right here are both the same glaze combination, but you can see the color is quite different. So this is like a really nice rich jade green, and then this is much more of a brown color. You're getting a little bit more of a green over here, but basically this piece is just, the glaze is just too thin. And I think Lynn might have actually done this on purpose because she wanted the porcelain design to show through the glaze underneath, but always try to be sensitive to that. I know a lot of people use Celadon and they sometimes don't get that green color that they really want. Just mix it up really, really good and put it on nice and thick, and you'll get a, more of a jade color like that. Another thing that people had a little bit of an issue regarding thick thinness was with the matte green, which is this piece right here. So you can see in this area, the matte green is like a really nice, kind of satiny matte green color like you would expect. But up here, it's much, much darker. It's much more of like, there's too much copper there. The glaze is too thick. And what happened was this piece, when Kathy dipped it, she was holding it at the top up here, and she just dipped it in the bucket and then pulled it out. And basically what happened was that bottom section of the piece stayed in the glaze longer than any other section of the piece. And so it just got a thicker application. So if you are doing this, you may just want to go in and out a little faster, or you can brush it on. But there's a lot of people who just put the matte green on way too thick, and their pieces are all this much, much darker color. So try to get the application a little thinner, like this. Go in and out of the bucket a little faster, and it'll be perfect. The stoner matte obviously is also another one. It's very similar to the matte green, where you get a very different color where it's thicker. This is that creaminess where the stoner matte is thick, and it's more of a toasty brown where it's thinner. So try to be extra sensitive with that glaze combination. So in addition to thick thinness being an issue with getting the right color, when people put the glaze on too thick, sometimes they run into issues where their pieces crack. So I wanted to highlight this one in particular because this plate, Kathy did a pretty good job glazing it. It only ran in a few little spots, but plates in particular are really, really susceptible to cracking. They have to shrink over a large distance. When you have this glaze here, it's kind of sticking to the shelf, and it wants to shrink, but it's stuck to the shelf, and so it ends up splitting under that tension. And this one's a particularly unfortunate one that I want to highlight because she didn't even do that bad of a job. This is only a very, very small mistake to have the glaze run this much, but it just so happened that she kind of got maximum punished, which is a direct contrast to this piece, which, arguably had more glaze stick to the shelf, but it was only in two spots. It's a smaller, foot area, so it's not shrinking quite as much. And, she got lucky and this one didn't crack. But whenever you see something like this, keep in mind, this is very, very close to this happening. So even when you're in a situation where your glaze runs a little bit, but your piece doesn't crack, you basically don't get punished for your mistake, try to make a mental note that you did make a mistake. You're going to need to fix it because, it's just kind of a numbers game where just some number of your pieces are going to crack when they run. And here comes the train, so give me 1 second. All right, so the train has passed and we are back. So the last few student pieces that I just want to highlight real quick are these three pieces that you see here. They are all Zeller, and they all have slightly different things going on. This one, probably has the thickest application of Zeller, and it's a really, really rich blue. This is, kind of like what we look for with the Zeller. Just excellent, excellent job. This one, the Zeller, is a little thinner, but even though the Zeller is thinner, you're still getting some of the blues, and because it's thinner, it's really highlighting the carving that Lynn did on it. So this is what happens when you mix the glaze really, really well, and you just have like a good application. You're always gonna get a little bit of a blue, just the more glaze you put on, the bluer it's going to get. So if you have a Zeller piece, there's a good chance that you just didn't mix it enough. The one exception is this piece over here. So this piece, there's a couple of different things going on with it, but the main issue was this piece was a shelf above these, so it wasn't that far away in the kiln, but for whatever reason it just got a little less reduction, and so the iron didn't pop into that blue color quite as much. So this should be fine if we just throw a little more glaze on it and refire it, hopefully in the middle so that it gets a nice reduction. We always try to put the Zeller glaze in the middle. So long as there's a name tag, we're always putting it in the middle. And when I put this in, it was basically just like the top of what I would consider the middle. So it just didn't quite get what it needed. The one other thing though that I want to highlight about this is that you can see the glaze crawling along this edge. And so basically the reason that happened is when Rich dipped this, he was probably holding it by the foot, dipped it in a bucket, and what happened was the inside and the outside got glazed at the same time because there's all these holes. And Rich knows that he wants to put the glaze on thick so that he gets a nice blue color. And so, he probably let it linger in there a little bit. But what happens is because the inside and the outside are getting glazed at the same time, this rim just gets completely saturated with water. And the glaze ends up not really sticking to the rim the way you want it to because it just, can't hold on. There's just too much moisture. It doesn't dry onto the piece. It just kind of stays wet on the surface. So if you're doing a piece like this where it's perforated, whether it's like a planter, a colander, berry bowl, whatever, you want to do a faster dip so that you don't get quite as much glaze on there. Wait for it to completely dry and then dip it again. Otherwise, it's just gonna, it's just not gonna stick up here. So those are the student pieces that I wanted to cover. I just wanted to cover two pieces that I did. This was just like a super fun, little thing. It's just Boz White and the underglaze blue, a little shot glass of this, the Walmart Yodeler, which has become oh so popular lately. And then this piece is just kind of like a fun thing. A lot of the stuff that I do is more on the pretty side, so I just kind of wanted to do something that was a little bit more raw and rough. And this is just the raw clay body with red iron oxide rubbed all over it. And then, these words search, destroy, painted in matte black. And there's a little bit of blue splattered on it, but kind of a fun piece. Working with the red iron oxide is really cool. You can get some super great earthy textures, especially ones that are very reminiscent of wood. So those are all the pieces I want to cover. Just a few tips for you guys moving forward. If you were glazing pieces and they didn't come out the way you wanted them to, the things that I would really focus on are just glaze application. Make sure the glaze is mixed really, really well, and make sure the glaze, when you put the glaze on, it's not too thick or too thin. And that's something that is only going to happen if you do a bunch of pieces with the same glaze combination. So if you're working with multiple different glaze combinations and things aren't coming out the way you want them to, try to narrow it down to just one glaze combination that you really like. Make it so that you've kind of perfected that before you start trying to expand your range. It's a little less fun to do that. I know that, being able to try a bunch of different things is usually more appealing, but if you want to have consistent results where, your pieces aren't running and the glaze always looks good, then you just really want to focus on just mixing the glaze really, really well and getting that right application. So that's it for this week. Have a good one, and I'll talk to you guys in class.